usually in a bed by 10 and up by 5, and thus was ready for one more day of my 14th year. Unless grandmother had forgotten the 15 centavo for the baker down Progressive Street, I would remember then that troll when what grandmother wanted because he recently had lost 3 molars. For young people like my cousin and myself, she always had said that the kind called pandesal ought to be quite alright. The bread of salt. How did it get its name? From where did its flavor come? Through what secret action of flour and yeast? Why did the bread come not brown and in the size of a little kiss? And why did a pair of lips convulse in a painful frown? Well, I knew how grandmother would not mind if I nibbled away 1 piece. Perhaps I might even eat 2, to be charged later against my share of the table. But that would be betraying a trust, and so indeed, I kept my purchase intact. For my reward, I had only to look in the direction where an old Spaniard house stood. On quiet morning, I imagined the patter of her shoe upon the wooden veranda floor as a further sign, and I would hurry off to school, taking the route she had fixed for me past the post office, the town plaza, and the church. The health center east of the plaza, and at last the school grounds. I asked myself whether I would try to walk with her, and decided it would be a height of rudeness. Enough with that, in her blue skirt and white midi, she would be half block ahead, and that distance perhaps throw a glance in my direction, to bestow upon my heart a deserving and abundant blessing. I believe it was right, in some such way. Her name, I was to learn many years later, was a convenient mnemonic for the qualities to which argument might aspire. But in those days, it was a living voice. Oh, that you might be worthy uttering me, it said. And how I endeavored to build my body so that I might live long to honor her. I guarded my mind and did not let my wits go astray. In class, I would not allow the lesson to pass unmastered. Our English teacher could put no question before us that did not have a ready answer in my head. It was perhaps on my guitar that her name wrought such a tender spell. Sometimes, when practicing my scale in early evening, I wonder if the sea wind carrying the struggling notes across the pebbled river did not transform them into Schubert's serenade. You must join the band, he said. Look, we all have engagements soon. It will be vacation time. He had some time now been asking me to join Minviluz Orchestra, his private band. All I had been able to tell him was that I had schoolwork to mind. I thought of the money I would earn for several days now. I had but one wish, to buy a box of linen stationery. At night, when the house was quiet, I would fill the sheets with words that would tell Aida how much I adore her. One of these mornings, I would borrow her algebra book, and there, upon a good page full of equations, there I would slip my message, tenderly pressing the leaves of the book. She would perhaps never write back, neither by post nor by hand, would reply reach me. But no matter, it would be a silence full of voices.
What do you want to be a musician for? At parties, musicians always eat dust.
Perhaps, I said to myself, she was thinking of a pack of dogs scrambling for scraps tossed over the fence by some careless kitten maid. She was sort of you could depend on to say that vulgar things. For that reason, I thought she ought not to be taken seriously at all. But the remarks hurt me. Although grandmother had counseled me kindly to my mind, work at school, I went again and again to Pete Saez's house for herself. She had demanded that I deposited my earnings. I had felt too weak to refuse. Secretly, I counted the money and decided not to ask for it until I had enough, with which I buy brooch. Why this time, I wanted to give Aida a brooch. I didn't know, but I had set my heart on it. Finally, it came. It was a warm December afternoon. I decided to leave the room when our teacher announced that a member of the class might exchange gifts. I felt fortunate. Pete was beckoning at me. Pete said he would tell me a secret. It was about the assault in the next Sunday, which the Buena Vista Women's Club wished to give Don Esteban's daughter, Josefina and Alicia, who were arriving on the morning steamer from Manila. At 7, on the appointed evening, our small band gathered quietly at the gate of Don Esteban's house. And when the ladies arrived, in their heavily shawled, trim panuelo twittering with excitement, they were commanded to play the poet and peasant overture. As Pete directed the band, his eyes glowed with pride for his having been a part of the big event. The multicolored lights that the old Spaniard gardeners had strung along the vine-covered fence were switched on, and the woman's remark that Esteban's daughter might have been preparation at all. Part hid his face from the glare. If the woman felt let down, they did not show it. By midnight, the merrymaking lagged. We played while the party gathered around the great table of the end of the sala. My mind traveled across the sea to the distant cities, and I had dreamed about them. The sisters sailed among the ladies like two great white liners amid a fleet of tugboats in a bay. Some had thoughtfully remembered, and of the last, Pete Saez signaled to us to put our instrument away. There was more food before us than I have ever imagined. I searched in my mind for the names of the snacks, but my ignorance appalled me. I allowed my covetousness to have its way, and not only stuffed my mouth with this confection, but almost carried most of the snack. None of my companions had thought of doing same, and it was some pride that I slipped a pack under my shirt. There I knew it would not be bulged. Have you eaten? I turned around. It was Aida. I mumbled something, I did not know what. If you wait a little, they'll be gone. I'll wrap a big package for you, she added. I walked away to the nearest door, praying that the damask curtain might hide me in the shame. The door gave me onto the verdana, where once my love had trod on sunbeams. Outside, it was dark, and a faint wind was singing in the harbor. I flung out to my arms, scattered the snack in the dark. Farther away, glimmered the light from the grandmother's window calling me home. When Pete divided our collection, there was already a little glow of daybreak. He walked with me part away home. We stopped at the baker's when I told him that I wanted to buy with my own money some bread to eat on the way to grandmother's house at the edge of the seawall. She laughed, thinking it strange that I should be hungry. We found ourselves alone at the corner, and we watched the bakery assistant at work until our body grew warm from the oven across the door. It was not quite 5, and the bread was not yet ready.
Every time I saw him, always walk and pass by on my window, I always saw him with a pack of pandesal. He always looked at me, like he looked through my soul. But it's awkward too, and cringe-worthy. Whenever I walk up the street, going to school, he's like a dog who always follows me. Sometimes, I think that he has a crush on me. Sometimes, I think he has a bad intention to me, but whenever I look at him, I think he's kind and friendly. I hope someday he will talk to me. I hope we could be friends and not strangers. And I hope he will love me the way I love him, even though it's secret.